Good evening. Welcome. My name is Kimberly Black-Rincan. I'm the director here at the Ignite Hub at Montgomery College. Thank you to all of our guests that are here in person today and our guests that are joining us online. It's March, folks. Where did the time go? We're already in March. So today, this week, we have our Fireside Chat Career Series with a very special guest, an alumni of Montgomery College, who's going to speak to us about her career in cybersecurity. So I'm going to jump right in. Oh, I'm sorry. Need to thank our sponsors, Verizon. Verizon is our sponsor of this guest speaker series that we have at the Ignite Hub. So I always want to make sure that we acknowledge their support of these free programs that we can bring these types of guests for you, and also we can enjoy a community meal together, which is very important, especially right now that we're finding places of community and safe spaces that we can be together and be present with each other. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker for this evening, which is Josephine Joey Tianchu, is a visionary technology leader, military officer, and intrapreneur who is revolutionizing how the U.S. Army addresses retention challenges for its junior officers. As a cybersecurity research staff member at a federally funded research and development center, Joey conducts critical analysis of complex information systems to ensure their security and effectiveness in supporting the war-fighting functions. Her multifaceted career spans roles such as cyberspace operations lead in the federal government, tax technology transformation at EY, and pioneering work as part of PwC's inaugural class of tax digital accelerators. Currently serving as an engineer lieutenant in the Maryland Army National Guard, Joey brings a unique blend of military and civilian expertise to her work safeguarding national security infrastructure. Her academic pursuits reflect a commitment to continuous growth, having earned an honors associate's in political science, bachelor's in accounting, master's in data analytics and policy, and now pursuing a doctorate of engineering in cybersecurity analytics. This educational foundation, combined with extensive experience in risk management and cyber threat analysis, has established Joey as an influential mentor and leader who excels in dynamic environments where technical expertise meets strategic decision making. Joey, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Yes, let's give her a round of applause. The title for tonight is Beyond the Expected, Building Innovation One Opportunity at a Time. So Joey, I'm going to turn off my mic and then hand it over to you. Thank you.
Mic check. Hello, hello. Wow. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Josephine Tiencher. I go by Joey. Josephine makes me feel like I'm being called into the principal's office. And I promise I was a fairly good student. So I just go by Joey. I feel like it just makes me more approachable. It's funny, when Kimberly was reading my bio, I was just like, who's she talking about? I don't know if I know that person, but it is truly, I'm trying to find the right words because in 2009, I was a student here at Montgomery College. And if you had told me that, what is it, who can do the math 16 years later, I will come back to share my journey, I would have said no. I don't know what you're talking about. That's never going to happen. But here we are today. Here I am, hoping to share my journey, really hoping to bring some hope. This is a safe space. So I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. The first thing is that, like I said, this is a safe space. I know it's a little crazy out there. I work with the federal government, so it's even crazier on our side. We now have, a dictionary of words that we're not supposed to use anymore. But I really just want the next hour and some change to be a safe space for all of us. So if you want to ask a question, please don't think about, should I use this word? Should I not use this word? Please just ask away. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that I do work with a lot of different organizations, but I'm here just as Joey. I'm here as Joey who graduated from Montgomery College in 2010. I obviously do not represent any organization. I'm not here on behalf of any of those organizations. I know I'm just going to say I'm hoping they love to have me, but today is really just here as me as an alumni. Um, so with that being said, one more thing before I forget, you will notice that I have a little pin, and this is my father. My dad is the reason why we all live in the United States today. Many, many, many years ago, he sat us down. We're all from Cameroon in Africa, and he's like, "We're moving to the US." And we're like, "Bro, what do you mean we're moving to the US? What do you mean? What does that? I don't understand." And the one thing he said was that no other country in this world is going to give you access to opportunities like the US would. So I'm standing here today. Unfortunately, my dad passed away of brain cancer in 2016. And I know that if he was still here, he would be sitting somewhere here and making sure that he's listening. So that's why I have his little pin here. Another thing, I will be going a little back and forth, just looking at my notes here, but I will try to, move around the room and make sure that you guys can hear me. So 2009 to 2025. Whew. In the meantime, I've become a mom to two little girls. One is 10, one is 7. They might as well be 27 and 25. If you have kids, I know you feel me on this. You understand what is it that I'm talking about here? um, I'm now a mom. I work as a cybersecurity researcher for a federally funded research and development center. And for some of you who may not be familiar, we're essentially providing the scientific research to the federal government when it comes to Department of Defense systems. So I get to do that. I love my job. We get to play a unique role in national security, and I can definitely appreciate that. I get the pleasure of serving in the Maryland Army National Guard. It's funny, before I joined the military, people will always be like, it's the best thing you can do in your life. And I'm like, whatever, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. But yes, it is the best thing you can do in your life. My kids are only 10 and 7. When I tell you, I'm already brainwashing them to join the army after they graduate high school, because the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the sisterhood that I've gained from that organization, it's unparalleled. Like, I haven't experienced that anywhere else. And I get to do that from a leadership position as an engineer lieutenant. I am the only female officer at my unit. It took a little bit of time to get used to my guys, but we got it. We worked on it. So we're now a cohesive unit, and I just love them to death. Um, on the side, because why not look for more things to be busy about? I'm also pursuing my doctorate in cybersecurity analytics from George Washington University. And a lot of people ask me, well, why are you doing that? The goal for me with that is to really become a thought leader when it comes to cybersecurity. I think we can, a lot of us, certainly you, Eduardo, you can appreciate how cybersecurity is such a critical field in today's world. And I wanted to be one of the people shaping the policy when it comes to cybersecurity. Um, Up until October of last year, the Pentagon pulled me into this initiative where they're like, okay, I think it's time for us to actually do something about retention in the Army. It only took them several decades. And they were like, we're looking for junior officers, because one thing we're realizing is that there seems to be a break in communication between the junior leadership and the senior leadership. So we want to enroll people who understand that breaking communication and can help us shape innovation in the Army, make sure we retain junior officers, and also if it comes to bringing solutions that we haven't thought about, we want to make sure that you guys are part of that discussion. So I do that. That initiative is called the Army Junior Officer Council, as in counsel, lawyer, and they really they stomp on it. They're like, you need to make sure it's counsel as in lawyer. And I was like, okay, I see you provided counsel to senior leadership. So I get to do that. Up until recently, the Maryland Veterans Chamber of Commerce actually approached me just through LinkedIn and networking events, and they're like, "We want you to be part of the board." So I now sit on the board of the Maryland Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and up until I think as of 2 weeks ago, I also sit on the board of this amazing organization called the Defense Entrepreneur Forums. They bring together innovative entrepreneurship at the forefront of national security to make sure that they're providing those solutions to the warfighter function. So I know I should probably do something else, like go to the spa or something and stop getting involved in all of these organizations. But I tell people as a mom, when I decide to volunteer my time to all of those organizations, it's really because those fuel me mentally. So I love my kids. God love them. But as a parent, I feel like you always need that little escape that will just fuel you and make sure that you're able to hit on the reset button until you go in full on parenting mode. So that's just a little bit about what I do. But today I want to talk about how did Joey go from Montgomery College to all of these things I just talked about. So I'm happy we have a couple of younger folks in the room. I know you had a lot more things you could have been doing right now. So I appreciate you guys and everybody for making the trip and being down here. Next slide, please. So the agenda, I wanted to kind of frame what I'm going to be talking about into just these three key themes. So the first one being starting points don't determine your destinations. And again, coming from Montgomery College, I would have never imagined that I'm doing half of the things I'm doing today. The power of strategic yes, because from my perspective, I am where I am today because I've really always been willing to raise my hand. It didn't always mean that I had the answer. All the time, I did not have the answer. A lot of time, I was like, girl, why did you just sign up for that? You don't know what you're doing. It's probably going to be challenging. But I want to talk about how raising my hand ultimately got me to where I am today. And then on the third item here with the agenda, it's really how was I able to packet all of that, the journey from Montgomery College, the strategic yeses, to now build my own innovation path and bring me where I am today. Next slide, please. All right. So I'm one of those people when I go to a lot of networking events because if you couldn't tell, I just can't shut up and I love talking to people and I just love meeting people. But every time I go out to networking events, I always like to think about something I can bring back because when those times hit and it's like, man, I don't know if I can keep going, I like to have a little tool set of things that I can look back to. And that usually helps me reset a little bit. So this is my gift number one to you guys, how it started, the youngsters in the room, right? How it started versus how it's going, right? I think that's what I see on the internet out there. So the picture on the left, it's me when I traveled to the United States. So this was actually me at the airport, at the international airport of Douala in Cameroon. You can see me on the very far, I think it's the left, or maybe my right left, something like that. And then you have my three best friend, and then the girl in the orange t-shirt is actually my cousin who now lives here. So sidebar, I now have more family living here in the US than back home. But this was me the very last day, and we were like, we got to take one last picture before you get on the plane. We got to take one last picture. And I was like, sometimes people are always like, I've had people come up to me and be like, you don't even look like you're from Africa. And I'm like, well, how are people who are from Africa supposed to look like? I don't know what that means, but sure. So I really just wanted you guys to see, I know, to see the beginning. That was me the last day I spent in Cameroon in Douala. And the picture on the right, on my right, will be my public servant headshots at the Pentagon. So when I was working for DoD, Office of Inspector General, I went between the Pentagon and the Mark Center. And then you have to go if you want to, but of course I chose to do that, but you can go and get your headshot. And man, when I got that picture, I was just like, look, like I had no words. It's like, so I wanted you guys to see, and please maybe at the end of the presentation, if you want to take a screenshot, please go ahead, because when you do hit those challenging moments, I really want you to come back to this and be like, look, if she was able to go from that picture to this picture, maybe let me just push on a little bit. Let me go a couple of more minutes. Let me go a couple of, couple of more miles. So this was my gift number one to you guys. The how it started versus how it's going. Next slide, Anthony. All right. So now let's get into the actual content. So starting points don't determine destination. In, let me make sure I get the dates right. In December 2010, that's when I graduated from Montgomery College. I graduated honors from Montgomery College. Montgomery College gave me so many opportunities. The fact that I was able to graduate honors, I was also a Phi Theta Kappa scholar. It definitely gave me a lot of confidence to move on and keep going from Montgomery College to George Mason University to Johns Hopkins and now to GW. But the thing I want to point out here is that a lot of time people think about community college as a limiting factor. From my perspective, it definitely wasn't a limiting factor. It wasn't a last resort option. It was the option that made the most sense for my family, excuse me, at the time. I wasn't necessarily ready to go into a 4 year college. And when I tell you the intimate classroom settings that we have here enabled me to create those lasting relationships with my professors. We have the smaller format, you get to learn better, you get to become very close. And another plug, I am in the National Guard today because of my very, very good friend that I met here. Mark Liang. So he is now a staff surgeon with the Army. But at the time, he just couldn't stop. He couldn't stop talking about the National Guard and then posting about it on Instagram. And I was like, bro, what is this thing he just can't stop talking about? And he was like, oh my God, Joey, you have to join the Army. But for you, you have to join the Army as an officer. So when I'm reflecting back, community college for me definitely didn't have a negative connotation to it. It was my launch pad, a launch pad that allowed me to then go to, larger schools and universities. And because I graduated as an honors, it also gave me that confidence. I was able to be a solid candidate on applications. And even up until today, on certain jobs, when they are willing to go back to that level of education, I have that sort of stamp of approval that, hey, she was able to graduate from Montgomery College at that level of excellence. And the one thing I also want to point out here is that, and that was one of the things that shaped me, people or students at community colleges usually juggle a lot. At the very least, they will be juggling their studies and maybe a part-time job. I actually worked here at the Department of Political Science. I had a part-time job here while I was going to school here. So I want to take a moment to appreciate the fact that those efforts you're putting in is not lost on me. I understand, and I want you to look at it from a resilience and adaptability perspective. The fact that you're able to juggle the school, the part-time work, and maybe even more. I had, at the time I wasn't a parent, but I had parents who were students. A lot of students come here not necessarily for credit classes, for non-credit classes. So all of those can be ingredients that you can use in your story, and then make sure that you're using that resilience and adaptability as you're moving forward and continuing on your journey. So cultivating a passion for continuous learning. The mindset is usually that the community college is a stepping stone, right? It's like you have a 2 year college degree, but then where do you go from there? What do you do? So for me, it helped me kind of broaden my thought process and my mindset and my horizons and be like, this is just the beginning. But I had no clue, to be honest, where I will go. And as a matter of fact, graduating from Montgomery College, I actually wanted to work for the World Bank of all places. And I work for the federal government today. Like, talk about completely different words. And I think on the next slide, I'm going to dive in deeper about this. But the point I really want to emphasize or stress on here is that community college will be what you make it to be. And drawing from my experience, it can be the determining factor in your journey and as you move forward, what you decide to become. I also want to make a little bit of commentary on the picture there. So this was me and my high school crew, okay? So as you can see, we had to coordinate outfits because, hello, why not? Okay. The outfits has to be coordinated. So this was me and my girl. This was about, I want to say maybe 3 months before I moved to the US. But yeah, this was us one day during the, I think it was a lunch break at school. And we were like, you know what? We look, you look like a group here, like a singer group. Let's just take a picture to just save that moment. And there we are. And I was like, let me just share another little piece of gift from me. Let me just share this here. Anthony, you can go to the next slide. All right. The power of strategic yes decisions. Man, what was I thinking going to the army? I'm playing. I'm playing. I'm playing. I absolutely love it. So let me start with the picture you guys are seeing. I actually didn't know this guy was taking this picture. So this was me at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. This is the day I qualified on my M4 carabine, which is the weapon that we use the most in the Army. So obviously, on top of the physical expectations, you have to be able to shoot. And if you meet people, what they like to call themselves the seasoned Army people, they will tell you that, hey, I don't know what you were thinking coming here, but this is still a profession of the arm. I need you to pick up your weapon and you have to be able to shoot. So we have to qualify. And if, let me make sure I don't get this wrong, but you have to, I think you have to score 20, you have to hit 27 targets at different distance. So you have 200 meters, 100 meters, 25 meters, and those go up pretty quickly. So you have to like, the target pops up here, it pops up there. So and I was just, I think I was about maybe two people, I had two people ahead of me. And I was just, when I'm like, you can't make this up. I was just standing there like, girl, what did you get yourself into? getting ready, getting ready to go qualify for my M4 carabine. But then during training, you have a photographer going around. So he took this picture and then they had this on the Facebook. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I actually like that. But another thing I love about this picture is the flag that we wear. Every single service, military service, will have the flag. We all wear the same. And I always remember my first week at boot camp. And by the way, this was in the middle of COVID. I enlisted in 2020, okay, when I thought that the world was coming to an end. I thought it was a wonderful idea to join the army. This is the result of it. But the very first week, my drill surgeon, he walked into the room and he said, and I'm going to keep this clean because we have kids and I'm probably being recorded. He said, I'm going to tell you guys right now, we don't do this stuff here. We don't know what racism is here. We don't care because when the enemy sees us, all he sees is the flag. He doesn't care what you look like. He doesn't care what you sound like. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He sees the American flag, he shoots. So when I was looking at this picture, I was like, oh my God, it's funny how, of all the angles, the photographer was able to capture that the flag and then me questioning my life decisions at the point, like, what are you going to do? But I really, really like that picture because talking about the power of strategic yes, I clearly wasn't able to appreciate what joining the army would mean, but then I jumped in. And then it wasn't easy for sure. I'm not saying that it's definitely not easy, but along the way, I was able to get mentors. I was able to get a support system. I was able to build, what we call in the army battle buddies, who are my people. So I now have that network. But I want to talk about kind of chronologically how my power of strategic yes came about. So after graduating Montgomery College in 2010, funny enough, I actually didn't go right into George Mason University. I told you guys that my dream job at the time was to work for the World Bank. So I actually got into American University in their honors international development program. I only stayed there one semester. My parents couldn't afford it. So I couldn't stay at AU at American University. I actually dropped out of college. after Montgomery College. And let me tell you, when you graduate honors and all of that with all those accolades, and you sort of have that dream taken away from you, you start asking yourself a couple of life questions like, what does this mean? Right? Like, am I ever going to be able to have that bachelor's degree? And then after the whole American University thing happened, I started working full time. So at the time, I think I was still working for Corner Bakery as a cashier, but then I applied to become a personal banker with TD Bank. But that job was in Virginia at their headquarters location. They are in, I think they're still there today in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. So look, now I'm a whole personal banker, okay? I work at a headquarter office. I go to Virginia. I start working, but I just couldn't let go of I have to get that bachelor's degree. So I noticed, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I noticed we have some immigrant families here. You know, my dad wasn't going to let me not get that bachelor's degree. Like, excuse me, ma'am, not in this house, okay? You need to figure that out, but you will get that bachelor's degree. So after working a few years, I finally was able to get a student loan on my own. And that's when I went back to school, but I still didn't even go back to George Mason. I went to Marymount University in Virginia, studying accounting. And at the time, my dad was an accountant. So I was like, I want to do something that my dad did, but I also knew that having a bachelor's in accounting will get me a very good job pretty quickly. So that was the path there. I go to Marymount University for about 2 semesters. And then one day the dean sends me an email. He's like, you need to come see me. And I was like, what did I do? I thought I was a good student. So I'm walking into his office and he's like, you're about to run into a problem. You might not be able to graduate. And I was like, Dean, what do you mean? He's like, because at the time I was working full time and taking classes at night, the core classes that I needed for graduation were only offered in the morning. And I was like, I can't win. Like, I thought this is it. And he's like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to figure something out. But the few accounting classes, the core classes that you need, are only offered in the morning. So here I am again, after crying a little bit. Yes, I cried. And I was like, okay, you need to figure this out. That's when I started looking into accounting programs that were flexible enough to fit into my work schedule. Because at that point, I've already moved out of my parents' house, right? I live in Virginia. My parents, they still live here. They still have a house in Maryland. So I was like, work is gonna have to take priority. So that's how I eventually landed in at George Mason University 3 years after I graduated from Montgomery College as an honors, a Phi Theta Kappa scholars, and everything in between. 3 years. And then from George Mason, I graduated in 2015. But before I graduated in 2015, the good thing about larger universities, they have these programs with like the big four accounting. So I was able to get a job. And funny enough, I applied for a job at PwC, a full-time job that wasn't supposed to start, I think, till like maybe the following summer after graduation. But I walked into the interview. At the end of the interview, the HR person is calling me to the side, and I was like, what is going on with my life? What did I do this time? And she's like, I know you wanted to come in the summer for a full-time position, but how do you think about starting in January as an intern? Now, mind you, I already had a full-time job at the time. So now she's like, do you want to come in as an intern? And I remember my question was like, but I already have a full-time job. What do you mean I'm going to come as an intern? And she said, Joey, trust me, you're going to like it. And then she said, first of all, you're also going to make a lot of money because the interns are on the hourly schedule and busy season. So you do get to work a lot. And at that time, I had to make a decision. Do I leave my very comfortable full-time job? I think at the time, I was working for a smaller government contractor in Virginia and take this leap of faith, go back being an intern, but now intern for PwC, okay? Because there's levels to this internship thing, okay? And I said yes, right there. So I went from like, I think that was around October, November. That January, I started as an intern at PwC, and then sure enough, converted into full-time in the summer. And man, I always tell people, PwC will forever have a special place in my heart. At that organization, I started as a federal tax compliance associate. And after about a couple of years, they had this opportunity to where they were like, and that firm was actually very visionary. They were like, we can just see how technology is going to play such a big role in the upcoming years. So we're trying to strategically position our workforce to be ready for that. So what they were doing, they created what they call the Tax Digital Accelerator Program, to where they started pulling people out of the traditional compliance practice, tax practice, and then they would send us to what I would call boot camp, technology boot camp. So they taught us about Alteryx, Tableau, UiPath, so automation, and all this technology too, coding. That's actually how I got introduced to coding with R. And then they sent us back to the practice, but then we were more like technology consultant. That's how I was able to make the transition from accounting to technology, thanks to PwC. And this was, I think, back in maybe 2018 at the time. Now I'm getting the technology bug. I'm like, okay, this is it. I always want to have a role that has to do with technology. But at the time, PwC was still trying to figure out, because that program was like a 2-year rotation program. So they were still trying to figure out, but what do we do with these employees after the 2-year rotation? Like, do they just convert back to the traditional tax accounting people? Do we create a practice just for them? They were still kind of going through that debate, but I'm not making this up, I promise. Across the street, here was EY, another big four accounting firm, but EY already had an established tax technology practice. They knew what they were doing, they knew exactly the clients they wanted to go after. So I literally just went across the street to EY, to be quite to be quite honest with you guys. And at the time, my husband was working for them, so he was able to refer me into the system. Literally, like on a Saturday, he referred me. On the Monday, I was on the phone interviewing with HR. And that's how I was able to land at EY as a tax technology consultant. Another yes, right? That was just another one of those yes. I'm at EY. I love my job. I love the work we're doing, because at the time we were actually doing tax software implementation for any large company you can think of. I mean, EY had an amazing book of clients. But I just loved it. We were traveling, making sure that people were updating their tax technology softwares, and I loved it. But then COVID hit. Or what I like to call the end of the world, what seemed like the end of the world. When COVID hit, and I always tell people, whether we want to admit it or not, every single one of us who were older enough to sit down and just had like an internal conversation of, if this is it, am I happy with what I've accomplished? Whether we want to admit it or not, at least at some point, because COVID was just so unprecedented, people were like, what is happening? What is this? So I had one of those moments, and I had one of those conversations with myself, which it happens a lot. I have a lot of conversations with myself. And joining the army was just always the one thing that was missing. Um, Honestly, when Mark, my friend who I met from Montgomery College, we will have the conversation about joining the army, I was always like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I got married. I got my 2 daughters. I was like, oh, now I really, really don't know, because it looks like it's game over at this point. But when COVID hit, I was like, girl, if this was it, there's this one thing you've always been thinking about. And it was joining the army. And literally, I wish I could find the picture now. If you see my picture when I was swearing in, I was literally mask on. We were down at Fort Meade. I had my recruiter next to me, but it was literally in the middle of COVID. But like I said, one of the best decisions of my life. Never looked back ever since. And then from that, I now find myself in a position where I'm like, okay, you're doing this army thing on the side. You obviously love it. And it became to the point where I started loving the service part of it. more than my job at EY. And I was like, I think it's time for me to go full time into service. And that's when I started doing my research. I found a recruiting event where, at the time, the Department of Defense was going to be at that event. Walked into the event, met my boss at the time. We talked for about maybe 20 minutes. I got blessed and lucky because her husband was in the Virginia National Guard. So she was very familiar with just the rigor of training and the military. She was able to understand where I was coming from a military standpoint. And at the time, she knew because I was wrapping up my officer candidate school. When I told her that, she was like, "You're doing OCS, which is the officer candidate school?" And I was like, "Yes." She was just like, go get your resume to the HR person over there. And you guys can Google this and YouTube this. They have a lot of videos, but the officer candidate school in the Army, man, it's one of the toughest school in the Army. And once you get through it, you understand why it's difficult. But as you go through it, you're like, man, why am I here? Um, but it makes sense because you're literally being put in a position where you can make decisions that impacts people's life. And from the National Guard perspective, what they call the traditional OCS, which is almost 2 years, it's for almost 2 years. Every month, you show up to drill and you have to go through this rigorous, intense training. And from like a mental perspective, physical perspective, emotional perspective, spiritual perspective, you are going to pray prayers that you didn't even know existed. But once you graduate from that program, the sense of pride you feel, you understand why they make you go through everything. Because as an officer in the Army, you have a lot of power, even at the very bottom level, which is a lieutenant. Like you can make decisions that will impact people's life. So they want to make sure that they filter out people who don't belong. And they have strategic ways of doing it. But that's kind of how I went from the big four positions, the EY, to now, serving full time in the federal government. And I love my job. I got hired as a cyberspace operations lead, which is funny because I work in cybersecurity now. But the funny thing is that cybersecurity chose me. When I met my boss back then, all I knew was that I was getting a job with the federal government. I actually had no clue it was going to be in cybersecurity. I knew she was going to give me a job with the DoD. And then I think about a couple of weeks going through onboarding, that's when I actually got my assignment. And then he said cyberspace operations lead. And I was like, okay. I always thought about cybersecurity a little bit, but okay, sure. And when I tell you, when I started that job, I was able to appreciate the impact that we had from a national security perspective. That's what made me fall in love with cybersecurity. Because what we were doing at the DoD Office of Inspector General was to make sure that every single system was well configured, was secured from a national security perspective, so that when people are exposed to those systems, we make sure that we're covered. I mean, talk about the impact on service, on public service. And I loved it. And I loved it so much, I decided to get a doctorate in cybersecurity, which is how I ended at GW today. So hopefully you guys are able to see the different decisions points that I had throughout my journey, and how at each one of those, whenever I had the opportunity, for me, it was always a yes. Like the last bullet point mentions there, that ability to pivot strategically for broader impact. So I was able to transition into cybersecurity, but from a national security perspective. And when people ask me why, I'm like, for me, I tell people that Africa made me, the United States adopted me, like literally. If I wanted to go back to my country today, I would have to ask for a visa because, like, I'm not even playing. Like, I will have to ask for a visa to go back to Cameroon. So for me, it's my way. It might sound cliche, but it's my way to give back. And I tell people when I go back home and I look at my kids, I just want to make sure that I did just a little bit to make sure that they have a safer environment and then growing up in a safer environment. So that's on that for that slide. Do we want to take questions now or wait till the end? I only have about a couple of slides left. All right, let's go. Anthony, you can go to the next line. All right. So on this side, let me talk about the pictures real quick. So the pictures at the top, I was at a conference. I mentioned that I go to a lot of conferences and networking events. I think that one was at the Northern Virginia Technology Council. It was a cybersecurity kind of conference that they had, and I went. This was actually kind of recently, I think maybe October of last year. And the picture at the bottom is actually a more recent one. So another one of the organizations I'm involved in is called Military Mentors. They do amazing job because that nonprofit was actually founded by two officers in the army, and they decided to create Military Mentor because they recognized the need that we need for intentional mentorship in the army, and they also wanted to do that not just limited to the organization but outside of the military at large. So they recently had an event in January, and fun fact, they had a combat photographer there taking screen headshots, and I was like, "Girl, you know I'm getting a headshot from you." So the picture at the bottom was actually taken by a combat photographer, army combat photographer. So that those are the two pictures there. On this slide, the few things I want you to take away is from the journey, all the strategic yeses I was able to put together. How do you then create your own innovation path? How do you package that? For me, it comes in the word of cross-disciplinary skills. When you think about it, I have a very non-traditional background. I started in political science, now I work in cybersecurity. I'm not sure how that happened, but in between in there, with each degree, with each challenge, with each opportunity, I was able to pull in skills that at the time I didn't necessarily even appreciate, to be quite honest with you. So sometimes, even now, when I'm sitting at work and I'm faced with like maybe a problem or a challenge that I have to solve, by me, the skill set that I'm able to leverage, that's why sometimes I stop and I'm like, oh my God, this methodology that I'm applying right now, I actually learned that back at MC. I actually learned that back when I was at PwC working in accounting, in tax. So putting together, trying to figure out from my experience, and it could be something as simple as I always tell people, we don't give enough credits to single mom or stay at home mom. Now, as you guys can tell, I do a lot. The one thing I know I cannot do is to be a single mom because it's not a single mom, a stay at home mom because it's hard. I tried that during COVID. It didn't work. I joined the army instead. I was like, the army, I'd rather join the army. And I'm bringing that up because it actually pains me. There are skill sets there that are valuable in the workforce that people can leverage. So if for you, it's being a stay-at-home mom, it's for you, it's being um, a side hustle, having a side hustle, being a business owner, those critical thinking skills, those strategic, the vision you're able to implement in your current work, or some of the things you want to be able to accomplish, do that. Leading with purpose and service, leading with purpose, it gets hard. I'm not even going to stand here and try to sugarcoat it. Some days it's hard. I cry. I got a couple of phone numbers. My people, they already know. When I call, don't tell anything. Just sit there and let me cry for 10 minutes. I just need 10 minutes, okay? Then we can pick this back up. But you want to be able to build a network of trusted advisors, people you know you can go to, depending on the specific challenge you're facing at that moment. Mentorship. We don't even have enough time for me to talk about mentorship. Every time I was able to go from point A to point B, it's because I always had someone I was able to go to and be like, I'm thinking about transitioning from this point to this point, but I don't know. And I always had someone who was able to take time out of their busy schedule to be like, consider this, think about this. How would the next challenge fit into the bigger picture? What are you trying to accomplish? So, mentorship is huge, which is why, as much as I can, I try to give back and I try to mentor because every time I needed it, people showed up and they were there. And I want to share a couple of things when it comes to the practical steps. I think this is where I have to be um, actually stick to my notes here. So bear with me because I want this to be as beneficial to you guys as possible. So the first thing, identify your passion. What is it that you're passionate about? For me, I always tell people I strive to be an asset to people I come in touch with, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a laugh, whether is if I can put you in touch with somebody else. I always try to be an asset to people. And when people look at my background, they're like, well, I don't really understand. It's like the theme has always been the same. It's just that I've had the opportunity to wear different hats doing that. The goal has always been an asset to people I come in contact with, whether it was while I was a student here, whether while it was while I was at PwC, at EY, the goal remained the same. Second, look at innovative tools and methodologies that can help you build your expertise. I have a low key addiction to school. I don't know if I'm ever going to be out of school. I'm still thinking about it, but it doesn't have to be traditional degrees. The beauty today, YouTube is probably the most underrated resource on the planet. If you need to go on YouTube to make sure that you brush off on skills, you make sure that you watch videos. And the great thing I love about YouTube, once you're able to find one of two influencers, look, those people are committed. Okay. They will put out videos every single week, make sure that they keep you informed on whatever topic it is you're interested in, and you can help build your expertise like that. If you're a fan of more short-term format education, you can get a certificate. You can try to join one of Ignite Hub's programs. There's options available. I've already talked about the support, but I just want to come back to it because it's incredibly important. You need a support system. You need to be able to build your village. It will get hard, and you need people you can just pick up the phone and call them and be like, I just need you to listen to me for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Can we just do that? Um, and then last but not least, just stay open, have an open mind to unexpected opportunities as they come through. Rely on your trusted body of advisors and then go from there. So I will have, you can go to the next slide, Anthony. These are just the key takeaways, but in the spirit of, I want you guys to take something home. If you go to the Yes Ladder Challenge, the next slide, Anthony, you guys should have things, notepads and little things. I want us to go through a little activity, please, please, please. And I want you guys to identify one immediate opportunity you can say yes to. I don't know if it's just calling that one friend that's been telling you about this business idea he has, and he wants you guys to partner on it, and you've just been like, I don't know. Just think about it. Just one immediate opportunity you can say yes to. It could be something as simple as maybe showing up to an event like you did today. Um, I want you to also think about a stretch opportunity. And what I mean by that, something that scares you. Like when I decided to join the army, I was like, I don't know, let's just do it. Think about that. What would be one stretch opportunity and then one dream opportunity? I tell people every time I walk into the Pentagon for meetings, I always get chills because growing up, I used to watch the Pentagon on TV. So what's that one dream opportunity where you're like, yeah, that's never going to happen to me? I want you to write that down. You will be amazed at the power of writing things down. I'm going to stop here. If you guys have questions, comments, if you want to share some of the opportunities you've written down, we can do that. But I'm going to stop here and we can move, transition into the discussion portion, okay? Thank you very much. If you don't You want me to turn it off? I was just gonna say, if you don't share, I'm gonna pick on you because that's what we do in the army. We pick, we. I love it because we force people to step outside of their comfort zone. There you go.
Already expected since I was in the Marines. I'll start with an easy question. I was like asking, what conferences do you like to attend, especially tech and non-tech?
Mhm. Okay. The local conferences I like to go to, like recently I went to, are you familiar with Gov CIO News and Media? So Gov CIO News and Media, because I work in the federal government, I try to do things within that space. And the thing I love about that is that they will usually bring people, obviously from the federal government, but also from industry. Like you have, for example, Verizon always shows up at those meetings. All the big government contractors are going to be there, but you also have the academia piece. So if you pay attention, and I didn't know this up until recently, but a lot of universities now have cybersecurity centers of excellence. Maryland, oh, you you see, you see? So a lot of schools will have those again because of the impact and the criticality of cybersecurity today, right? So the thing I love about GovCIO, they will bring people from academia, government, and then industry. A non-tech conference, let me see. Can I think of one? Funny enough, I tend to go to a lot of tech conferences. Have you been to the Red Hat Black Hat conference? Yes. Yep, they had one in Vegas. That conversation did not go well with my boss at the DoD when I was trying to go when I try to go to Vegas as at a conference. But Black Hat is a pretty big one. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. I don't want to bring my civilian work into this, but they actually do a lot within the space. So the company I work for is called Institute for Defense Analysis, IDA. So because of the kind of work we do, they host a lot of events. Actually, they have one coming up, I think in April, called Data Works. And again, they bring a lot of people from the federal government just because of the kind of work we do. So those are, in terms of non-tech, honestly, I try to go to like church stuff, if I can say that. Like for example, Elevation Nights, if you're familiar, they have mostly like an online presence, but they actually have an Elevation Night coming up on Thursday at the Capital One, what used to be the Verizon thing. So I try to do just to like fuel me mentally and spiritually.
Well, no, I think you've already. I was going to ask what FFRDC you actually worked at, but you said IDA. So, okay, yeah. So I got that. Right, right. Yeah, so I guess, so you say you love the Army, right? Um, can you talk about what make you like the Army more than you like probably other things you've done?
I knew you will have a really good question. See, I can just tell. I love the army. And again, this is going to sound cliche because of the camaraderie that we have, but I'm going to tell you why. If I grab my phone now and I text one of my battle buddies, that's how we call each other, at least two or three people are going to answer, and that's not going to take 10 minutes. I find myself in situation where I needed to talk to someone, whether it was at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, 5, 6, 7, 8, someone will be on the phone with me. It's like people say that we are a cult. I defer to that. We are not a cult. We just love each other. It's crazy. We just love each other so much. And I think the reason being is because now we're not at any active war, but we were at some point. And when you think about it, your battle buddy can save your life before your family does. And I think that that bond is what really gets us together. And with the army, I get the opportunity to just, this is not gonna sound crazy, but it's a safe space mentally. I walk in there, I never have to send my representative or something like that. As I walk in, they accept me. And then they just, exactly, they just take me in. It's like, it's crazy. And another reason why I love the army does push me outside of my comfort zone. They do. And I love that. And that was one of the reasons. I was like, okay, you need something that's going to make you work out all the time because you have to, just so you don't get complacent. And the army will do that. The only limiting factor in the army is your physical ability. But if you're up and you know this, sir, you see. So, but as long as you're open, you're willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situation, you will do it. And as a fun plug, when I was down at Fort Jackson during boot camp for my birthday, I was throwing bombs on the field. I mean, how many? I mean, that was my best birthday. Like, oh my God. But yeah, those would be the main reasons why I love the army. Mhm.
And safe space sort of discussion. What do you worry about the Army going forward with the changes that's coming through?
Yeah, indeed.
So I'm going to preface this again by saying that everything I say right now is just for Joey and Joey alone. But I love your question. And funny enough, I was on the phone yesterday with one of my mentors in the army, and I asked her that very same question. She's a colonel in the army. If she's listening to this, she knows exactly who she is. And I was like, ma'am, I don't know. I'm struggling. Those were my words. I was like, ma'am, I'm struggling. I joined this organization for reasons that I don't know if those are still being reflected. So, to answer your question, sir, it's hard. This is a very uncertain time. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are asking questions that they never thought they would ask, especially when it comes to the military in general, because we always want to keep that separation, right? Between all the politics and the, unfortunately, it seems like those lines are starting to blur. But this is the one thing she told me that I liked. She said, it's chaos now. And I want you to understand that I understand where you're coming from. Just give it a little bit of time. I'm not promising it's going to go exactly the way you want, but just give it a little bit of time. And then she said, I just don't want you to think about leaving because we need people fighting on the inside too. She was like, don't think about leaving because if everybody leaves, who's going to keep fighting the good fight on the inside? Right. And I was like, see, this is why I keep telling people I need mentors because I was getting ready to just give up. And I'm being completely transparent. Like, what I signed up for is not necessarily what I'm seeing being portrayed. But she's like, just give it a little bit of time and then reevaluate in a few weeks, in a few months. But just don't think about leaving right away because we also need people to strategically, and she said, being sneaky a little bit, but still fight the good fight. It's going to get better. You don't have any
Um, if you will give an advice for your younger self, what would it be?
Oh, I'm going to repeat the question. He said, if you had to give an advice to your younger self, what would it be? I like it. That's a really good question. Um, if I had to give an advice to my younger self, be gentle with yourself. The problem with us high achievers, we're extremely critical of ourselves. And my older sister, she's always like, girl, it's okay to get 8 hours of sleep. You'll be just fine. So, and again, to be completely transparent with you guys, it took me a little while, but I finally understood why I'm so critical of myself. And I'm always like, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta achieve the next goal. So I mentioned to you guys that my dad passed away of brain cancer in 2016. He went in the span of when he went to work one day. By the way, my dad worked for the Montgomery County public school system, so I have a deep appreciation for teachers. He went to work one day during summer and he loved it so much. He would be one of those people, he would work over the summer break. He never took the summer off, never. So he went to work over summer. He passed out at work, went to the emergency room. They started running tests. Oh, we see a mass. We see a mass. We need to do a biopsy. We need to do a biopsy. Oh, he's got about 18 to 2 years. And my dad died almost exactly at the 18-month mark. And when I tell you the dreams, the aspirations, the goals that he had, he was only 57, by the way. So I feel like he got robbed out of his life. So that's when I'm always like, oh, you got the master's from Johns Hopkins? Well, of course you got to get the PhD. Just do the PhD. When I tell you I'm thinking about going for a second PhD, I'm gonna need prayers for that because I do not need it. But I'm always like, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go. But it's okay, right? So I'm trying to be more gentle on myself and be like, it's okay to take a break, right? I understand where you're coming from, but it's okay to go hang out with friends. Now, just don't hang out with friends and not study, right? But I'm trying to learn to be more gentle. So that would be the one advice. Like it's okay to achieve goals, but you need to find a little bit of balance there, right? Because we're humans. We are. That was a really good question, sir. I like it. Huh? Here? Yeah, so this is what I mentioned. So when my dad passed away, we all had these pins. So this is his picture, and then that's his name. And then it says forever in our hearts. And then you have the day he was born and the day he passed away. So yes, so he passed away already. Brain cancer. He was sick. Brain cancer. So he was sick. Oh, what caused the brain cancer? Oh, if we could answer that question, please, if someone can answer that question, please let me know. Cancer is just one of those things, people still haven't figured that out. What's the real cause of it, unfortunately? Yeah. And I think that's probably why it still kills people, as much as he does, but unfortunately. Yeah. Good. We're getting good on time? Oh, I was wondering when you were going to ask a question.
So you talked about having a lot of diverse experiences. How do you how do you put it together so people recognize your transferable skills when you haven't necessarily had the linear path that they may automatically be looking for?
Very good. So the way I usually market myself, I tell people that the goal is to leverage critical thinking, adaptability, and resilience. And at that point, it doesn't really matter what industry you're attaching yourself to. Because when you think about it, and I could be wrong, but you appear to me as someone who's been exposed to different experiences. So especially when you start leveraging the military, people will understand, oh, I can see some discipline there. I can see some commitment there. I can see some rigor there. Um, the the military gave me a little OCD, attention to detail, right? So people who've been in the military, for example, will understand what's the skill set that I bring to the table. But now on the industry side, I'm able to say I was able to go from accounting to tax technology to cybersecurity because the underlying purpose was to leverage critical thinking and problem solving skills. And those then become industry agnostic, if it makes sense. So that's my sales pitch right there. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you guys coming. Oh my God, this was so much fun. Oh,
Wow, Joey, that was one of, I'd say, in the like top 5 best presentations that we've had for Fireside Chat. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have alumni come back. And our students and all of our guests had really wonderful questions, which is always, for me, the best part of this guest speaker series is that it's all of you online or here in person with your questions that make this such an enriching community for all of us. So thank you for that. We have a small token of appreciation for taking time. So thank you. I also have some housekeeping things. So first and foremost, tell us, what did you think of Joey? We have a survey. Please, in the chat, there's a link in here, scan that. We do share the results with Joey. So it's anonymous. We don't know who you are, but we do big picture report back of what did people think. So please take the time for that. I'd also like to make a plug for our March programs. March is really busy here at the Hub. So in addition to our regular guest speaker series and our career monthly workshop and coaching, Eduardo is starting this week doing our IT career pathways, a 3-part series, 3 Wednesdays in a row. If you know anybody who is curious about getting into tech and wants to know what's the difference between cyber and cloud or whatever, Eduardo is going to be here on Wednesday nights. It's hybrid. Please come or refer a friend or family member or anybody in your network to come, especially given what's happening. There are people trying to make that strategic yes and that strategic choice. So this is free information. I have a good friend and colleague that says love and information are free. So please come or encourage somebody to come and get that information. We also have our spring boot camps. So we are doing an intro to coding with Swift, and we're also doing intro to app design. Yes, intro to app. That's in April, but we are offering that again. It's 4 days here in the Hub. Now, that one's not hybrid. That one's in person because we're going to be using our devices here. It's, again, an exploration. Come and test it out, learn about Swift. And I'm going to make another little plug. I like to make lots of plugs. We are using our part-time faculty who teach in the summer coding camp. They are going to be teaching this boot camp at the Hub. So we're expanding a little bit and having some of our part-time faculty come and teach. What else am I missing? Oh, the Worlds of Work. There is an inaugural program that the college is involved in with WorkSource Montgomery and Montgomery County Public Schools. There's 5,000 middle school students that are coming over 3 days. So the Ignite Hub will be 2 days here in Rockville. They'll be on the other campuses as well, and we're going to have a table and talk about coding to MCPS middle school students, 8th graders as well. That's some of our big programming that we have unique in March as well. So what did I miss, Eduardo? Anthony, did I miss anything? We have our future of tech, an AI topic. Let's see here. March 20th, no AI slop, writing with intention using large language models. So we have an AI topic that's coming up as well. So please, if you have not joined our mailing list, we send out all this information so you can register, or what some people do, they forward it to their friends or colleagues or people who they think could use the information. So please feel free to do that. Okay, hopefully by now you have filled out the survey and you've heard some of the upcoming programs at the Ignite Hub. Again, thank you for coming out. You have a choice to how you want to use your time and you choose to be here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. See you soon.